I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark, the Department of Justice, and quite possibly the President of the United States himself. Somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. Ms. Clark's targeting may reflect a culture of disparate treatment, and the evidence provides reasonable cause for a federal probe into potential civil rights violations.
Stephen A. Smith just dropped a bombshell that should have every WNBA executive on edge. He's not just calling out bad officiating, he's saying federal investigators should look into what's happening with Caitlin Clark. This is the same Clark who drove a 601% jump in merchandise sales, tripled team values, and pulled in 1.29 million All-Star votes, yet somehow ranked 9th among guards in peer voting. Something doesn't add up, and Stephen A. says it's time for the government to get involved.
The golden child, in her second year in the league, who was top 4 in MVP voting last year, the assist leader last year, a galvanizing talent that has done wonders for the NBA. If she is seen to be physically getting abused on a basketball court in a way that is such a clear and flagrant discrepancy compared to what happens to others, that man is not going to say something.
You know what makes this whole situation infuriating? The money. Caitlin Clark didn't just join the WNBA, she instantly became its economic engine, driving numbers that should make her untouchable. The data is staggering: merchandise sales skyrocketed, Fever viewership tripled, total league viewership doubled, team value tripled, and league pass subscriptions jumped 366%. These aren't minor boosts, these are the kind of transformational leaps leagues spend decades chasing.
Caitlin Clark has done for the women's NBA what Michael Jordan once did for the NBA. Made it more valuable, watchable, and marketable. Instead of protecting its transformative star, the league's leadership ignores the relentless targeting of Ms. Clark, treating its greatest asset as if she were a PR headache. That approach could turn into a legal liability for the WNBA.
Clark pulled in over $11 million in endorsements and drove WNBA app engagement up by a staggering 613%, numbers the league had never seen before. She single-handedly reshaped the financial landscape of women's basketball, with nearly every measurable metric showing explosive growth directly tied to her presence.
Since she joined the league last year, Ms. Clark's impact has been seismic. Merchandise sales soared 601%. Indiana Fever viewership jumped 170%. The team's value tripled. League pass subscriptions climbed 366%. App engagement rose 613%. And her endorsements topped $11 million. She's the economic engine driving the league forward.
Here's where it takes a dark turn. Rather than protecting their biggest star, the league let her take an unprecedented level of punishment. The numbers don't lie. Clark absorbed 17% of all flagrant fouls in the entire season, double the rate of any other player. Let that sink in.
Let me tell you what kind of quotes Trump would lead on. Sophie Cunningham told the Wall Street Journal, she's Caitlin Clark's teammate, the Indiana Fever, the star player of the league is not being protected. Rebecca Lobo, analyst, ESPN. What does she say? Every single one of those plays against Caitlin Clark has been a foul.
Think about that. The player generating the most revenue is also taking the hardest hits, and officials keep letting it slide. Cheap shots against the woman who tripled team values. Flagrant contact that would earn instant whistles for veterans getting ignored when it's Clark. Watch the footage and the pattern is obvious. Hard fouls that should be flagrant, blatant targeting waved off, late hits with no calls at all. The league's most valuable player was treated like a practice dummy while the officials turned a blind eye.
By the way, when she was out for the All-Star weekend this year, because she was hurt, by the way, because of the roughhouse tactics all of those folks alluded to, the ratings dropped 36%. They still had over 2 million views, but they had over 3 million last year. It dropped because she wasn't playing. Now, I told y'all, Candace Parker tried to tell y'all, Rebecca Lobo is trying to tell y'all, the goose that lays the golden eggs, the tide that lifts all boats.
This isn't coincidence, it's a clear pattern showing just how badly the WNBA has mishandled its most valuable asset. When your top revenue driver is taking twice as many flagrant fouls as anyone else, your system is broken. The real question is, how did the league let jealousy and resentment outweigh basic business sense? How do you watch someone completely transform your financial model, then fail to protect them from blatant, systematic targeting?
Do you know what Gino Auriemma said? He said, she's being targeted. I don't remember when Michael Jordan came into the league, guys looking to go out and beat him up. Only the Detroit Pistons were looking to beat him up. And then after that, the New York Knicks with Pat Riley and Ewing and Anthony Mason and Xavier McDaniels and Charles Oakley and all of these guys. The John Starks of the world, Derek Harpers of the world eventually, stuff like that.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out the WNBA, he put the league on notice. By suggesting federal intervention, he signaled that this has moved far beyond sports commentary. When Stephen A. makes that leap, it means the situation has hit a breaking point that should have Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and every league executive seriously worried.
Ms. Clark's targeting may reflect a culture of disparate treatment, and the evidence provides reasonable cause for a federal probe into potential civil rights violations. Am I making it up now? Remember I said this months ago. Remember I talked about people being jealous. The Cheryl Swoops of the world and others. Remember I pointed that stuff out? Remember I talked about the rough housing?
The Wall Street Journal dropped an explosive op-ed calling for the federal government to investigate Caitlin Clark's treatment as a civil rights issue. This wasn't some random blogger stirring the pot, this was one of America's most respected publications putting the WNBA on notice. The article didn't hold back in detailing exactly what they saw happening to the league's biggest star.
This would mirror the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission investigation into the Erica Hamby's pregnancy discrimination claims against the WNBA and her team. Congress and Labor and Justice Departments would be justified in examining the facts.
Stephen A. Smith backed it up, saying on air that federal investigators have real grounds to get involved. He's not talking about a few missed calls, he's talking about systematic patterns that could violate workplace protection laws. And when someone with his platform and legal knowledge says there's a case, people pay attention.
You don't think Caitlin Clark could become an issue of national, potentially international, and definitely federal proportions? You don't think so?
This has moved far beyond sports commentary. We're talking potential Justice Department investigations and even congressional oversight. And when federal agencies start digging into internal communications and decision-making, everything changes overnight. Every email gets combed through. Every meeting gets dissected. Every policy decision ends up under a microscope.
Senator Jim Banks' 2024 letter to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert demanded answers on Ms. Clark's treatment. Congress and the administration should demand answers from WNBA leaders, investigate officiating and internal league communications, hold hearings, and insist on real reforms. This is in a Wall Street Journal. The Labor Department should review the league protocols for workplace safety. If evidence shows discrimination or retaliation, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division must act. If leaders remain inert, Congress should reconsider the WNBA's special privileges, including its antitrust and broadcast considerations. Checking referees' work with NBA-style last 2-minute reports would be a meaningful first step toward building trust.
The case hinges on workplace safety violations and disparate treatment, the same legal standards used in major civil rights cases. Federal investigators aren't interested in basketball rivalries or locker room politics. They want to know if someone's workplace rights are being violated through systematic targeting and a failure to provide adequate protection.
But 17 flagrant fouls have been called against people for beating up on Caitlin Clark. That's practically double what's happened for any other player in the league. They have evidence to say she's being treated unfairly.
Think about what that means for the league. Federal investigators would have the power to subpoena referee communications, front office decisions, and internal policies on player safety. They could demand answers for why the WNBA's most valuable player took twice as many flagrant fouls as anyone else. They could also investigate whether the league's failure to address clear targeting created a hostile work environment.
That was the first salvo. I'm not asking you. This is Stephen A, baby. I'm telling you. It's the first salvo. It's not an accident that this is coming shortly after WNBA players foolishly wore those shirts. As Candace Parker pointed out, pay us what you owe us, antagonizing the league, with pending CBA negotiations coming.
When federal investigators start probing systematic targeting in hostile work environments, the WNBA's problems grow far bigger than basketball. The league that should have been celebrating its brightest star instead created a situation that might need government intervention to fix. That's not just embarrassing, it's potentially devastating for future operations and the league's credibility.
Mystics co-owner Sheila Johnson questioned Ms. Clark's 2024 Time Athlete of the Year recognition. Ms. Clark shattered fan vote records with 1.29 million all-star votes, yet ranked only 9th among guards on the player ballot.
Want to see jealousy in action? Look at the all-star voting. It's a clear example of Clark's peers trying to downplay her impact. Fans made their choice loud and clear, but the players sent a very different message. Clark racked up 1.29 million all-star votes from fans, a record-shattering number that should have cemented her as the event's undisputed star. These weren't casual votes either. Fans were engaged, spending on merchandise and tickets, and showing they were fully behind her.
Dick Vitale. When the 1.29 million all-star votes came in for Caitlin Clark, yet she was ranked 9th among guards on a player ballot. Quote, absolutely pure jealousy that the WNBA players voted Caitlin Clark the 9th best guard. Someday they will realize what she has done for all of the players in the WNBA. Chartered planes, increase in salaries, sold out crowds, improved TV ratings, etc. And they ain't lying. They ain't lying.
But when the player voting results came in, it was shocking. Clark was ranked 9th among guards by her own peers. 9th. The player who brought millions of new viewers to the league somehow didn't earn top recognition from fellow athletes. The woman who transformed the league's entire economic landscape ranked behind players most casual fans couldn't even name. This wasn't just disrespect, it sent a clear, coordinated message. When fans overwhelmingly back someone, but peers rank them low, it reveals a lot about internal league dynamics. The gap between fan support and peer rejection highlights exactly what Stephen A. Smith and others have been criticizing about WNBA culture.
And those players that are talking about their value, what's going to be held against you is looking at your value when Caitlin Clark is not playing. And when you see a precipitous drop-off, it ain't going to be about y'all, it's going to be about her. Even if it's wrong, even if it's unfair, that's how it's going to go down. And when it goes down like that, that's exactly the kind of ammunition that the president will use to his advantage as he so sees fit.
The numbers make it clear. The league's most popular player was being snubbed by the very people who should have been thanking her for the attention and revenue she brought in. These same players were benefiting from higher contracts and increased media coverage thanks to Clark's popularity, but they still couldn't acknowledge her impact. The all-star voting exposed the harsh reality of league priorities. Fans embraced Clark's transformational effect on women's basketball, while veteran players actively tried to keep her from earning the recognition she deserved. This wasn't just about rankings, it was about control, gatekeeping, and resisting the disruption Clark represented to the established order. Here's the truth WNBA executives don't want to admit: their future depends on keeping Caitlin Clark happy and protected. Her 2025 return is a crossroads moment. Either the league steps up to support its biggest star, or they risk losing the golden goose that rescued their economics.
Some of it, Caitlin Clark brings on herself because she talks, she chirps, she antagonizes. That's how Angel Reese became so famous, because Angel Reese clapped back at her the way she was clapping back at people leading into that national championship loss to LSU a few years back when she was at Iowa. And that's how Angel Reese became famous.
The TV contracts, merchandise deals, and sponsorships Clark brought in aren't one-off windfalls, they're multi-year agreements banking on her continued success and safety. Nike didn't hand her that huge deal expecting her to take hits every night, and ESPN didn't ramp up WNBA coverage just to watch officials ignore flagrant fouls against the league's most popular player.
The players were making a case of what they deserve and what they earn, and right around the time that happens, now you got the Justice Department and the Trump administration being egged on to pay attention to this issue so it will get addressed. And when you have Senator Jim Banks, a senator, writing a letter to the WNBA commissioner demanding answers on Caitlin Clark's treatment.
The Indiana Fever's front office has made it clear they won't let Clark face the same treatment in 2025. They've invested too much in building around her to watch other teams take cheap shots at their star. They're not going to sit quietly. Look at the roster moves. Sophie Cunningham joined not just for her skills, but to help protect Clark on the court. Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell have all shown they'll stand up for their teammate. If federal investigators open cases, the WNBA could face sponsors pulling out, networks renegotiating contracts, and a PR disaster that makes current controversies look minor. Corporate America doesn't want to be linked to workplace safety violations or systematic targeting. They'll walk away faster than anyone expects.
Treatment towards this golden goose. A spectacular talent that is one of the preeminent futures, if not the future face of the WNBA, if she isn't considered that already. In Caitlin Clark, who also happens to be white, playing in the Midwest, with evidence of unfair treatment.
Clark now holds all the leverage. She transformed the entire economic landscape of women's basketball in a single season. The league needs her far more than she needs them. 2025 will show whether the WNBA has learned to protect its most valuable asset, or if outside intervention becomes necessary to ensure her safety and success. The league had a choice: embrace the player who revolutionized their economics, or let jealousy and resentment sabotage the best thing that ever happened to women's basketball. They chose wrong, and now federal investigators may have to step in to protect Caitlin Clark, from the league itself and from envious veterans. The WNBA can either evolve or face the consequences of its mismanagement.